The late afternoon sun beat down on the old gas station at the edge of town. I had just pulled in with my truck, a rugged machine I had built myself from scratch over the course of 5 long years. Every nut, every bolt, every line of wiring had passed through my hands. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was my pride, my project, my invention. As I pulled up to the pump, the engine gave its usual deep rumble, drawing a few curious glances. Most people admired it, kids pointed, and older folks nodded with that look of respect reserved for hard work. But then, I heard the sound that could ruin anyone's day. A sharp, mocking laugh. I turned, and there she was, a woman in oversized sunglasses, clutching a designer bag, striding across the lot with her nose tilted so high she could have stared at the clouds. She stopped right next to my truck, gave it a long once-over, and snorted. "You actually drive this thing?" she sneered. "What is this? Some Frankenstein junkyard project?" My little nephew could draw a better truck with crayons. I bit my tongue. Normally, I'd just ignore someone like her, but she wasn't done. She circled the truck slowly, pointing out imaginary flaws like a critic at a fashion show. "Look at those tires, too big. The paint, hideous. And that noise, do you even know how engines are supposed to sound? You must be desperate for attention parading this heap around." People were starting to watch. A couple fueling their sedan whispered to each other, and the gas station clerk had even stepped outside to see what the commotion was. My jaw clenched, but I stayed silent. "Oh, don't just stand there," she barked. "You can't seriously think this monstrosity is safe on the road. I should call the police before you hurt someone." She crossed her arms triumphantly, as though she'd won some kind of battle. And that's when a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Hey, watch your mouth, lady." It was Gus, the station's head mechanic. He'd been working in the garage out back, hands still greasy from an oil change. He marched over, glaring at her. "That heap you're insulting?" he said firmly, pointing at the truck. "That's his invention. Built it himself. Stronger, cleaner, and safer than half the factory junk you're probably used to. You wouldn't last 5 minutes behind its wheel." The crowd gasped. Karen's smug grin faltered. My heart raced. Something told me this was only the beginning. Karen blinked at Gus's words, as though someone had just slapped her ego. Her sunglasses slipped slightly down her nose, revealing sharp, darting eyes that now glared at both of us. "Oh, please," she scoffed, waving her manicured hand. "Don't tell me you're defending this. It's a death trap on wheels, and this amateur thinks he's some kind of engineer." Gus crossed his arms, his grease-stained shirt straining across his broad shoulders. He didn't flinch. "Lady, I've been fixing cars for 30 years. I know the difference between a junker and a masterpiece. And you're looking at a masterpiece." The crowd murmured. A few people even nodded in agreement, but Karen wasn't the type to back down. She puffed herself up and raised her voice, determined to win an audience. "You expect me to believe this noisy hunk of scrap is safe? Ha! You're all being fooled. Real vehicles are built by companies with money, testing facilities, and safety standards. This clown probably threw it together in his backyard, with duct tape and YouTube tutorials." I felt the sting of her words. But I also saw something else. Her performance wasn't just arrogance. She craved control. She needed everyone to agree with her, or else she'd lose the spotlight. "Well," I said finally, my voice calm but steady, "you're wrong. Every piece of this truck was engineered carefully. It runs on a hybrid system I designed myself. Cleaner emissions, better fuel economy, and twice the durability of most stock trucks. And Gus here inspected it. Didn't you, Gus?" "Darn right I did," Gus said, nodding. "Passed every check with flying colors. Safer than most cars I see come straight from the dealership." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ha! Lies. Anyone can say that. Where's the proof? Where's the paperwork? Where are the certifications? For all I know, this is just an illegal science project. Honestly, you should be ashamed, endangering the public like this. Someone has to stop you." She whipped out her phone, her long acrylic nails clacking against the screen. "Yes, I'm calling the authorities. Let's see what the real professionals have to say about your little toy." The crowd stiffened. A woman whispered, "Is she serious?" While a teenager nearby muttered, "Karen alert." Gus stepped closer, his jaw tightening. "Lady, you don't know what you're messing with. If you bring the cops into this, you're going to embarrass yourself big time." Karen smirked as the phone rang. "We'll see about that." I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. As the situation edged toward chaos, whatever came next, I knew my invention and my reputation were about to be tested in a way I'd never imagined. The gas station lot fell silent, except for the faint buzz of Karen's voice as she barked into her phone. "Yes, officer. I'm at the Shell station on Route 9. There's a dangerous, illegal vehicle here, unsafe for the road. Please hurry." She ended the call with a smug tap and slid her phone into her designer purse. "There," she said, smirking. "Now we'll have real experts deal with this nonsense." Gus muttered under his breath, shaking his head. The onlookers whispered nervously, torn between curiosity and discomfort. Some pulled out their phones, no doubt recording every moment. It wasn't long before the distant wail of sirens cut through the air. 2 patrol cars rolled into the lot, lights flashing but sirens silenced as they parked. The officers stepped out, one younger, fresh-faced and cautious, the other older, his posture steady with years of experience. Karen practically leapt toward them, pointing wildly at my truck. "Officers! Thank goodness you're here. That contraption is a public hazard. It's loud, unsafe, and should be towed immediately. I demand you write him up before someone gets hurt." The older officer raised an eyebrow, glancing at Gus, then at me. "This the vehicle in question?" "Yes, sir," Gus answered firmly before I could speak. "But with all due respect, this lady's making a scene. That truck isn't a hazard. It's a piece of engineering. I inspected it myself." The younger officer circled the truck slowly, tapping his flashlight against the body panels. "Looks solid," he murmured. He peeked inside the cab, checked the tires, then popped the hood with my permission. The hybrid engine gleamed under the afternoon sun, every part meticulously arranged. Karen huffed. "Don't be fooled by shiny parts. It's probably glued together. Or stolen. Yes, stolen. That would explain why it's such a mess." The older officer shot her a look sharp enough to cut steel. "Ma'am, you've made a serious accusation. Do you have proof of theft?" Karen stammered, caught off guard. Well, no, but just look at it. Doesn't it scream illegal?" The officer turned back to me. "Son, mind telling me about this machine?" I took a breath, my voice steady. "Built it myself. Hybrid system, half electric, half biofuel. Cleaner than diesel, stronger than standard gas engines. Passed a full safety inspection by Gus here. I've got documentation in the glove box." The younger officer flipped through the papers carefully, his eyes widening. "Sir," he said to his partner, "these are legit. Engineering certifications, emissions test results, the works." The crowd leaned in, waiting. The older officer closed the folder, then looked directly at Karen. His words cut the silence like a blade. "Ma'am, this isn't junk. You just insulted an inventor." Gasps erupted around the station. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Karen froze, her perfectly rehearsed arrogance crumbling into awkward silence. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, phones still pointed at the scene. Her cheeks flushed red beneath her makeup, and she shifted uncomfortably in her heels. "Inventor?" she repeated, her voice cracking. "Don't be ridiculous. He's just some backyard tinkerer. Nobody important." The older officer's expression didn't change, but his tone grew firm. "Ma'am, do you realize what you're looking at? This isn't just a homemade project. It's a fully certified prototype. We've seen reports at headquarters about this technology." Karen blinked rapidly, clearly struggling to process what she'd just heard. "Reports? What reports?" The younger officer stepped forward, holding the papers I had provided. His voice carried across the crowd. "This truck has been reviewed by the state's Department of Transportation. It's cleaner, safer, and more efficient than most vehicles on the market. If anything, it's the kind of invention that could change the industry." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Someone even clapped. Gus grinned, wiping his greasy hands on a rag like a proud uncle. Karen, however, wasn't done flailing. That's impossible. If it was so important, why haven't I heard of it? People like me know about these things. The older officer turned toward her sharply. Because not everything revolves around you, ma'am. Some people work hard in silence until their work speaks louder than any insult. He glanced at me, his eyes softening with respect. And this man's work speaks volumes. Karen's jaw dropped. For once, she had no comeback. She stood frozen, humiliated in front of an entire crowd that now looked at her, not as a bold truth-teller, but as a fool who had tried to belittle something far greater than herself. The younger officer closed the folder and handed it back to me. Sir, you should be proud. Honestly, I'd like to take a ride in this myself sometime. The department could learn a lot from what you've built. Cheers and laughter erupted around us. Even the gas station clerk shouted from the doorway, "Free coffee for the inventor." Karen spun on her heels, muttering something under her breath. As she stormed toward her luxury SUV, she slammed the door, started the engine, and sped away without looking back. I stood there, overwhelmed by the moment. What started as an ordinary fuel stop had turned into a public defense of my life's work. Gus clapped me on the shoulder. Told you, kid. Build something worth believing in, and it'll stand up to any storm, even a Karen. For the first time that day, I allowed myself a smile. My invention had been tested, not just by engineering standards, but by arrogance, ridicule, and doubt. And it had passed. The world now knew this truck wasn't a joke. It was the future. Enjoying this dramatic Karen showdown? Hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more jaw-dropping, real-life encounters. Also, give this a like if you found it gripping, and drop a comment. Do you think the police handled Karen the right way here?